what we'll do is we'll take you through the platform as a whole and how that relates to our healthcare and big pharma clients and how we're helping them deliver their programs and their change. As we go through the next 30 minutes, you will see 4 pop-ups. Those are multiple choice questions. So very much appreciate your engagement in that as they pop up throughout. My name's Andrew Etherington. I'm the CEO of P3MO, and I'll now bring up the platform to take you through how that's supporting others in your industry across big pharma and healthcare. So, in terms of the P3MO platform, before going through and orientate you, it is fully configurable. So the text, the colors, any metrics can be configured at the business level or portfolio, program, and project. And that means that whether you are in this case, the sort of clinical trial elements, or whether you're running, say, something like a restructure of a finance department or the build of a new manufacturing facility, you can have that across various terminology, various frameworks, and therefore suit the population at that local level. In essence, that helps to support adoption and overall rollout and value from the platform itself. Now, on the left-hand side, you can see that this is being configured to your industry. And down you can see a various features. So one being scorecard objectives and what do you want to achieve. Of course, with any delivery, there's risks and issues, and there's a plan of who's doing what, where, and when. And in particular, this portfolio is driving down into the clinical value, trial budgets, and very much a focus on CROs and vendors. And we will go through today how the platform's supporting others and managing the resources efficiently and effectively, and also how it can then be used in terms of an intake, or as some of you may refer to it, as pipeline projects. Now, when you come in, if I put in on my portfolio director hat or stakeholder hat, I can clearly see a view that there's 7 key projects within the clinical evidence delivery portfolio. Green, amber, red, at risk, on track, and delayed. And you can see within that drives down into 2 key programs: oncology, accelerator, and digital endpoint. And each of these charts show various facets to allow you to, in essence, slice and dice that data to drill down as you see fit. And what you will see in the bottom is a number of key projects. And here, without leaving the home page, very much at a glance, you can see, well, what's my performance? In this case, it's Sophie that's running it, and we can see it was last updated on the 11th of June. So we've got an element of provenance and audit trail throughout, which I will take you through. Now, when there's 7, it's quite easy to do that through the table. But if you wanted to drill down, if that was 70, or as some of our customers, 700, you want to be able to drill down. So if we focus on, first of all, what's at risk, with a single click, you'll see the homepage changes. So we want to say, well, show me at risk, show me what's at risk within the clinical trial acceleration. And down the bottom, we can see it's digital endpoint validation. Now, at this point, there's 2 options. So we're currently 2 clicks. With the 3rd click, we can go down into the detail, or we can decide, which I will take you through, to comment through the chat function as well. Now, in this case, we'll go down into the detail of that project. So in that 3 clicks, it's about speed, it's about efficiency. You are down into understanding, well, what are my problems within digital endpoint validation? On the left-hand side, you can see there's various elements which will be familiar: your stages, your start date, your end dates, your functions. In each of these, it's very simple to add. They can all be configurable. So whether that's these selection types or these drop downs, again, tailored, configured to your terminology at all levels of the organization. Now, one of the elements in big pharma and healthcare, what's always, pertinent, is the supporting documentation. Now, whether that be through clinical trial itself or through maybe a restructure and you have a future org design, there's always periphery documents that may not be in the platform itself, but are nonetheless important. So it's about how do you have a centralized collaborative space to retain all that documentation so that you can spool out essentially to various elements and start to then bring it central into the platform. Speed up decision making, speed up access as well. And of course, as you would expect, you do have stakeholders. You can see here, you can select people that are on the platform, or you can start to add people that may be relevant, whether that's internal stakeholders, suppliers, partners, such the like. And then we will touch on resourcing in here, but you can see within that working team, you can start to have various team members, such as Mira here, and she's a clinical trial manager in this case. And for those of you that may be into hashtags and LinkedIn, various social platforms nowadays use them, you can use that as a quick way of filtering and also take some very kind of actions and planned tasks. Now that's where you would update, but what you'll also notice is if I then change hats, and this is where maybe your project personnel or your operational leads will live largely, everything to be updated is done from this page. So it's a single place where you can start to look at elements such as your planning, your scorecard objectives, and start to then update those very quick and very easy. Now, if I focus on the plan initially, one key thing that we find is very pertinent, especially in the clinical setting, in the healthcare setting, is actually you will have key dependencies. You want to be able to mark critical paths. You certainly want to be able to model to see when dependencies break and what the knock-on impact would be on the overall plan. And that's where that becomes sort of quite key. Now, whilst Gantt charts are fantastic, for project boards, all of that, they're very, very good, and it's very, very flexible. You can also have a table, which from a tactical task perspective, can be just much more efficient. You start to pop in, you do your updates, that's now at risk, it's now on track. You can start to then very quickly update, add comments, and so on and so forth. And what you will also see, we'll move on to scorecard objectives, is scorecards, risks, evidence, and I'll come back to budget, and vendors are all the same user interface. It's all a table view. You can click to expand. Now, the reason for that is how do you ease adoption? How do you get a system or a user experience where once you learn one module or one element, you've actually learned them all. So adoption is the biggest failure in any change. And actually, our way of tackling that is, first of all, how do you make it easy, of which then you can wrap around a very cohesive support model. I mentioned budget earlier. So budgets, of course, this is a phase 2 activation budget. They are very pertinent. That's all about, are things on track to cost that quality? Now, each of these budgets, you can have various instances, and think of these as wallets, as funding profiles or cost centers, essentially. And actually, those funding sources or cost centers, as you may call it, you can start to split that up. and you can have various ones that may contribute to that clinical allocation in this project as a whole. Now, for change hats now, that's how you would update. If I take you out, and I now change hats as if we were a stakeholder or a sponsor. And at that point, you're not really interested in the detail. If it goes wrong, of course you are, and that's the space that we've just went through. But let's say that risk is always a big one with any delivery. So here you want to see the risk. So you've logged in, you've understood, right? I'm now focusing on risk. So a single click, I bring up all of my risks, all of my dependencies, things like that. And what I can start to do is, well, I want to see what's in clinical operations, and I want to see what's running high. So very, very quickly, I have a quick view of where I can then access across everything, what that looks like, how it's performing, and I know in an instant where my overall progress is at. Now, what I can also do, because when you see the highs or you see the status is open, probability is medium, is you may want to comment on it. You may have a query, actually. And that query is very much about how do you ask a question, or how do you understand the data with a colleague and collaborate around context. So you can start to then say, well, okay, within this risk, say, central lab qualification delay, I want to now ask, in this case, pharma admin, I want to now ask how that's performing. Why is that? What's the mitigation? So I can start to then communicate directly and then really drill down and hone into the problem with that context in front of me. So taking away the need to share PowerPoints or taking things into different platforms as such, it then allows you to go through that as well. Now, each of these modules are the same. Planning, if I just pick on, because that is slightly different. Of course, you can have your portfolios, you can have your various views and orders, but again, you have the table. Let me understand what's due next week. And within that, what's at risk? And I can start to then drill down there as well. But then come through, let's go into resourcing in this case. So within resourcing, this is about how do you understand who's working on what and what is their capacity? You know, are they over allocated? There's big problems across all industries today, and we see it, certainly see it a lot in pharma and healthcare, where resources and people working on projects may actually not be full time on that project at all. They might be running multiple, or they might be an operational lead that's then there to understand not just the day to day, but running a project on top of that. So their total capacity is not always 1 or 100%. In this case, it's 0.6 FTE and therefore only 60%. So, but what you can do is you might say, well, show me who's over allocated. Let's have a look at Amelia. Let's sort of drill into that and actually start to understand some various metrics. So Amelia's currently a CMC quality lead on central lab readiness. You can see where she's over allocated at the moment, and you can start to understand the cost that she's burning each month. So that allows you to just understand that impact, to use Amelia as a resource appropriately, but also be very mindful of Amelia's workload, well-being, duty of care, and starting to just make sure that the staff are well supported, as much as we're all under pressure as well. One thing that will come on to is intake. Now, intake is a way in which you can, if you have pipeline projects, submit a request. So think of this as maybe a project request, maybe it's a new study in this scenario, and actually you want to understand what people are asking for, what the name would be, the owner, the description, start dates, therapeutic areas, and these are all fully customizable. You can move these about, you can change sizes. It's very, very flexible. So you may have multiple for various different parts of the business, as an example. And that will then automatically feed through. Now, like anything, as much as a system is fantastic, a lot of industries, even still today, since 1984, where the world of Excel and the Microsoft suite came to life, um, everyone always still loves reports. So we do have a report builder. Now, this report builder allows you to create reports in PowerPoint or PDF. So essentially, how do you get to a situation where people maintain the system and actually the reports are just generated? So you may still want your PowerPoint. We're all very familiar going into program boards, business reviews, and yes, it is PowerPoint. But this starts to take away the manual collation of that for sure, and also move people traditionally away from Excel or fragmented systems into one central location that can then provide not just the need for the output for the board, but the benefits and the automation that you need to drive efficiencies at the front line as well. So here we've got various boards. So we can start to go in and create or view this portfolio plan in that case. Now, this plan here is what you can see is a PowerPoint slide. So very, very simple to update. You can have within it presets and templates, and actually you're able to very quickly edit where that plan on a page is. So you can start to create these reports. You can start to then submit these reports for approval as well. So if I take you in to create a new one, so let's create a new report, and we will then show how quick and easy it is really to create this. So you're met with a blank canvas, and right now we want to go here, which is what we call presets. So all of these are drag and drop. So you can start to, first of all, say, okay, now I want a slide. So I've now got my slide, and actually within that slide, I want a plan. So I'm now going to drag in a chart, and within that chart, I can start to select what these are. Or I can go in to build an already pre-made template. So here I've got a pre-made plan, drag it in, it's instant. If I want to then change that filter from phase 2 to screening, then it will pull that through in its entirety as well. And of course, if you were building PowerPoints and you wanted, actually, I just want to frame a series of slide templates. In each of those slide templates, I want to then put different information on. You can start to then build that pack. You can then look to run a regular drumbeat, as we say, or governance. So if there was a regular quality assurance or a regular, issue of the pack every, say, month or every week, you can start to do that. Now, for those of you that may, and rightly so, be worried about and focused on control and making sure it goes through an appropriate approval process, you can also do that as well. So you do have a series of sequential steps. So if you had essentially a QA, and in this case, we'll say Emma's responsible for that, what we can then do is we'll say this one is a formal approval. And we will say that that's required by Lucas. And of course, you can have multiple approvals, but we'll say Lucas in this case. So you can start to automate all of that as well. Now that concludes the demonstration. I hope that was beneficial. There have been questions sent in previously, which I'll now address and go through. So, and I'll keep the platform up as we go. Let's see. Super. So the first question is, our program managers won't touch anything that they think is time consuming. Can you actually show what updating a status looks like day to day for them? Super. And thank you to who asked that one, sent it in earlier. So if we go back, and we will then land on the home page. So now a project manager, I'm coming in and I'm responsible for updating, let's say, phase 2 site activation. Now, the one point I will note that if I'm project manager, in this case, responsible for that project, I may only have the right permissions for that project. So therefore, I don't have to even drill down. And actually, I can then single click and I can go in and update that. So as a day in the life of, you'd be coming in, you'd be saying, okay, well, my status is now at risk. My finance is now on track, but my clinical evidence is regulatory submission readiness. Can then update, all going well, to, and I can start to then do my updates. Very, very quick, very, very easy. If I want to add in key actions, I'd add a task, you know, please complete brief. Pop that in for a future date. If the date is future, pop it in here, this admin account. Then I can submit. That is so. So it's overdue, it's red. If it's up and coming, it's green. So it'll automatically inform you that as well. Now we do have a few others. So let's see. Am I right in saying this is for commercial and operational excellence, or could it also be used for R&D? So due to the configuration, and I'll show you how quick and easy it is to do. Yes, it can be used for R&D for sure. It can be used arguably, and if I think to how customers are using it at the minute, there's customers using it in the R&D setting for things like marketing campaigns with the NFL, for example, through to organizational restructures, implementing new IT systems. So very multi-different facets. Very, very easy to do. Each of these charts would be changed like so, or they can be hidden. And actually, without getting too technical, these can be on various levels. So if you just wanted for phase 2 site activation in this case, or maybe for regulatory and supply chain readiness as a portfolio, which is different from clinical, if you ran them using two different frameworks, then you can start to use the settings to change that as well. So hopefully you can see how quick and how easy it is. And if you're a global admin, you can set all this up. Of course, our team will support you in that. You know, this is not a service where it's the platform and, you know, you have to then implement it yourself. It comes with a support model where from day one of you going live, the platform will be configured and it can be multi levels of configuration if that's you know, appropriate for your business and setup. And you will then be handheld throughout that as part of an adoption support to make sure you get the value, not just as quick as possible, but you can sustain that value as well. Now we've got time for a few more. See, we've got five minutes. So what does a realistic first deployment look like? Could we have a single team proof of concept before we commit across functions? How long and what does it cost to get started? So if I take the first part of that, so can you have a proof of concept? Absolutely. In fact, we would always recommend that. And there's two ways of deploying new systems or new processes, anything really. And you either go with a big bang approach where you go across the organization as a whole, and actually, whilst that may on paper seem a great approach, 90% of the time, the rollout seems to go fine, but actually what happens is 2, 3 months down the line, you realize that adoption falls by the wayside because it wasn't really embedded properly. So it's very much about, for our approach, how do you get that proof of value, not just proof of concept, but proof of value? That then also lays the foundation for what does that scaling throughout different functions or different teams actually look like? Because whilst we have a standard implementation process, it does need to be tailored to your needs, to your culture, to your organization. And that for us is very, very important. In terms of timescales, now this is, of course, that depends on complexity, but I guess less complexity in the purest sense, but more scale and the pace of training. But you know, the platform can be rolled out and is timely as between 2 to 4 weeks. Or what we normally do is, whilst out the box, it can be 2 to 4 weeks. If you've got elements of configuration that you'd like, if you have a certain phased approach that fits better with your culture or your structure, then very much we'll work with you on that. And in terms of cost, cost can vary, but to be clear, this is not a system which costs millions of pounds. We're not talking the level of complexity and cumbersome of a large scale ERP implementation. This is very much how do you get, it's about time to value as much as it is about maximizing the value itself. And I think we've probably got time for one, maybe two more. So security and compliance is really important. What standards do you operate to? So we operate, as I said at the start, we operate across some heavily regulated sectors, you know, government as much as big pharma, healthcare, and a number of others. Security and compliance is absolutely paramount on in all those industries, in every industry, and to every customer for us, agnostic of size, scale, or brand and kudos. It's front and center. So our security and what we operate to, we are SOC 2, Type 2 compliant. We are also ISO 27001, and we do have GDPR for those in the UK, but also Cyber Essentials Plus too. The one thing I'll add to that, it's not necessarily security related, but we are very much focused on sustainability, and we are on EcoVadis, and we do hold the silver status on that as well. So we'll see if we've got time. Let's see. We run several autonomous business units with their own P&Ls. Can each business unit run its own portfolio while the board still gets a consolidated view? Absolutely. And that's where the configuration that I showed earlier, but also not just the homepage being a consolidated, but if you wanted to go down the route of a consolidated view through reports, you can have each of those business units, each of those portfolios within that start to then roll up as such. And if one business unit wants it one format, it can have that various various elements as well. Now I'm conscious that's 11:29 at the minute, certainly for those of us in the UK. I just want to say thanks for attending. Very much appreciated. If you do have any questions or you would like a one-to-one demonstration, please do reach out. You can find us on the website at p3mo.io, or do reach out to us at hello@p3mo.io as well. And thank you very much.